we've got a little bit of spillage from the NFL draft regarding what the Browns' plans were going into it from ESPN. So welcome on into the Cleveland Browns Report. Let's break down a little bit of the Browns' hopes and wishes going into this year's draft. As Jeremy Fowler wrote, a few teams tipped me off before the draft that Cleveland really liked him, talking about Dillon Gabriel, presumably as a day 3 pick. That he went in the 3rd round was a mild surprise, but Brown sources tell me the earlier selection of Jalen Milroe to Seattle did not scare Cleveland. It was taking Gabriel at number 94 regardless. So much for 2-3 months of everyone telling us the Browns are going to take Jalen Milroe simply because their first-year offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, worked with him in college. I mean, just take a step back for a moment and really think about that. Andrew Berry, who's had this job, his dream job since 2021, was going to make the quarterback selection of the future, hopefully, based on my first-year offensive coordinator overlapping for 1 year at Tuscaloosa with Jalen Milroe. Doesn't that seem a little bit like a stretch to me? So I'm glad that the Browns did not go down that path for 2 reasons. One, I don't think Milroe is going to have a long-term career in the NFL. 2, you should not make draft and personnel decisions based on, hey, they had some fun in college a few years back. Let's run it back in the NFL. Yeah, surely that always goes really well. So as for Dillon Gabriel, though, the pick for Cleveland at 94. I mean, we are getting more and more evidence after the draft, and that is not a huge surprise as teams want their fan base to be confident in their pick, but that the Browns really liked Gabriel. One thing that, went over my head, and shame on me, the Browns brought in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders for a visit. Do you guys remember that? It wasn't groundbreaking news, but okay, yeah, we knew this was coming, but still, once it happened, it's worth discussing. That happened, a month and a half ago. They also brought in Dillon Gabriel that day. Kind of got overlooked. Probably a learning lesson moving forward. Not that every player that gets brought in for a visit is a shoo-in to be a pick, but when 2 guys are in one tier and another guy's in a separate tier, but they're all brought in on the same visit, I don't think it's for logistic purposes. I think it's so the Browns can see how someone that people view as a 2nd or 3rd tier quarterback fare against guys who are viewed as a 1st tier quarterback. So Gabriel, in a lot of ways, fits what Kevin Stefanski wants in a quarterback, right? It is someone who had accuracy from the pocket, who had a long collegiate career filled with a ton of experience and makes good decisions in the pocket, offers upside in the mobility department. So at this stage, I think we're all at the same point of we're going to try and be optimistic about it, even though when the pick was made, it definitely wasn't my preferred choice at that spot. But I wouldn't say on an island here, but maybe somewhat in the minority of I did not want the Browns to take Jalen Milroe. I know a lot of fans gravitated towards that quarterback as we got closer to the draft as a day 2 target. For me, I just can't get past one, the major step back he had from 2023 to 2024 in a lot of ways. I mean, from 23 touchdowns to 16, and the interceptions nearly double from 6 to 11. If you're going to be a team's future franchise quarterback, I don't think seeing that regression because of a personnel coaching change in college is going to bode well for you in the NFL when we see personnel and coaching changes happen all the time, right? And it's unfortunate to quarterbacks, but if a quarterback is going to be unsuccessful because an offensive coordinator gets changed, you're never going to have a good quarterback because good OCs either get hired away to other teams or bad OCs get fired and you're on to the next one. And as a 1st or 2nd round pick quarterback, you have to be prepared to have different play callers in your ear throughout your NFL career. So with that being said, a little bit of background on what went into the quarterback selection for pick 93. Now, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I would love to get to 45,500 subscribers off of today's video. We're 17 subs away. So do me a big favor and click that sub button down below if you have not already. Now, a little bit more from Fowler on the quarterback room in general. He said, The Browns look at their roster through the prism of value and currency, which at least one source pointed out could lead to an eventual trade if injuries happen across the league. Cleveland gave up a third rounder and 2 fifth-rounders for Gabriel, Sanders, and veteran Kenny Pickett. Perhaps the Browns can get a pick back for one of them. This is starting to become, I wouldn't say the $1 million question, but $500,000 question. Like the $1 million question is, who's going to start week 1? That's the biggest question here. And for me, that answer is Joe Flacco. But the next question then becomes, all right, what do the Browns do with 4 quarterbacks and traditionally only 3 spots? And I mean, in the more modern era of the NFL, 2 spots, right? You see a lot of teams just roll with 2 quarterbacks on their 53-man roster. So the Browns have 4 for traditionally a max of 3 spots. So Fowler brings up the possibility of a trade, which that is somewhat dependent on an injury happening elsewhere. Can't guarantee that. You know what I mean? Is it likely? Yeah, 32 teams. You got a month of training camp. Yeah, there's a okay chance of that happening. It happened last year with J.J. McCarthy. They already had Darnold in the wings, but I mean, so I would not say it's very common at all for a starting quarterback to get injured in training camp and the team trade for one. I feel like it hasn't happened in a little bit, so maybe on one hand we're due, but teams are just becoming more and more cautious by the year when it comes to preseason. We're seeing that the Sean McVay disciples and just overall thinking spread throughout the league of we're not going to play our starters in any of the 3 preseason games. I mean, just go back like 10 years ago when we had 4 preseason games. Remember week 3 of the preseason, the first half, was the dress rehearsal. Your starters played for the whole first half. Nowadays, maybe they get a series, but a lot of the young, new thinking is we're not going to play our starters. And so that just limits the possibilities of an injury happening. So I'm going to give you my, prediction on what's going to happen, but I do want to hear from you first on, who do you think is going to miss the cut altogether? Let's say the Browns have, it's September or whatever, it's 53-man roster cutdown day, and a fortune teller or someone from the future tells you the Browns are going to have 3 quarterbacks. Who gets cut? Who does not make the initial 53-man roster? For me, I think we got to look at one of the 2 veterans. I'm confident that the Browns are not going to cut their 3rd-round pick in Dillon Gabriel. That would just have to be a huge acceptance of a failure of a top 100 draft pick so quickly. I don't think that's going to happen. Shedeur Sanders. You would say that the 5th-round pick would be more likely than the 3rd-round pick. I don't think the Browns are going to cut Shedeur Sanders for one big reason. He's still just a rookie. You just don't move on from, by move on, I mean subject them to the waiver wire and potentially lose them after their first training camp. So I'm confident that neither rookie is a good chance of getting released, which means you have 2 veterans. Now, Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett is just 1 year too young, okay? From a money standpoint, if the Browns wanted to move on from one of these guys, like, hey, they just weren't very good for us in training camp, it's not financially all that difficult. Like we saw, Flacco has a bunch of money in incentives, but that's what it is, incentives. In terms of actual money that Jimmy Haslam owes him for, $3 million. So, it's not, a ton, but it's not minuscule either. I guess in the NFL grand scheme of things it is, but still, $3 million for some guy to hang out with you for OTAs and minicamp and then cut him after that is a little bit of a waste. But these numbers right here are these are not numbers that you can't move on from. But the difference between these 2 guys is actually 1 season. And by that, I mean, if Kenny Pickett was just 1 year older, he'd be going into the 5th year of his NFL career instead of the 4th year of his NFL career. Do you want to know why that 1 year separation is so important? If you are an NFL player who has played 4 accrued seasons or more, when you are released, you are not subject to the waiver wire. You are instantly a free agent. If you have played 3 or fewer seasons, you go to the waiver wire. Kenny Pickett has played 3 or fewer seasons. So, if he were to be released, he'd go to the waiver wire. Whereas Joe Flacco, if he were to be released, he would be a free agent. So the big difference here is the Browns would not risk losing Flacco to another team. We see this every year on roster cutdown day, where players release a veteran and go, this is just procedural. We're going to bring you back in 24 hours when we can put a couple of guys on injured reserve. We're going to put you on our practice squad, and then we're going to elevate you for your 3 free max elevations. And chances are, after your 3rd free elevation from the practice squad, someone will be injured on IR, and then you can take their roster spot. This happens every year, but we always forget that that's what happens to a lot of veteran players. So that's one possibility is the Browns release Joe Flacco and go, but you're not going anywhere. We're just going to put you on the practice squad like they did when they signed him the very first time, and then we're going to elevate you 3 times. Remember, that's how the Browns' Joe Flacco journey began. He was a practice squad guy, and when they maxed out his 3 free elevations, then they had to give him a roster spot. But why not utilize those 3 free, elevations? So that's one possibility. But let's just say no injuries across the league happen, and the Browns don't trade any of their 4 quarterbacks. I'm thinking they roll the dice on Kenny Pickett. I'm thinking they decide, well, maybe from a roster maneuvering standpoint, there's some upside with like everything I just said by releasing Flacco and then putting him on the practice squad. But I just get the sense that there's not going to be teams making big strides to release a player on their own roster to bring in Kenny Pickett. So I think they put Pickett on the practice squad. And on the 53-man roster is Joe Flacco and the 2 rookies. And if Flacco were to get injured, or they decide to bench Flacco after a few weeks, then Pickett and Flacco switch spots. And now Pickett gets added to the 53-man roster. The only downside to this is if Pickett is on the practice squad, you can never just toss him into a game at halftime. If Flacco were to get injured, it would not be Pickett replacing him. So any type of quarterback change would have to happen midweek. So there's my, long shot prediction at what's going to happen based on it's May 8th, and we have a lot of football ahead of us. All right, before we sign off, quick reminder, at Fanatics, you can get a Quinshon Judkins jersey if you want to get maybe one of your favorite Ohio State players in the last decade or so. Get a Mason Graham jersey. Get a Shedeur Sanders jersey. Go to chatsports.com/CLE rookies. I put this link in the comments and description of today's video, so it's a great way to support the channel while getting yourself a Browns jersey in exchange. Speaking of Judkins, last little bit here on on Judkins from Jeremy Fowler. The Browns look at the selections of running back Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson at the end of an era of sorts. Cleveland had a good run with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, but knew it needed to get younger and more explosive. Retooling the backfield was a priority entering the draft. This is a big sigh of relief for me because I was terrified that the Browns would just go skinny at running back, right? Go with this new trend of you don't need to get a good running back early. You can find great guys in day 2 and day 3 or day 3 like Isaiah Pacheco. How's that working out right now for the Chiefs? Like, they're still fine, but I think they would probably be happier with an upgrade at running back. So, and also, I hate that argument. The Chiefs just won a Super Bowl with Isaiah Pacheco, a 7th-round pick as their running back. Cool. You think Pacheco's the reason why they won it or Patrick Mahomes? I'd say Mahomes. Do you have Mahomes? No, you don't. So you might want someone better than Pacheco. Pacheco caught a lot of strays all of a sudden. But, yeah, I want the Browns' ground game to get back to what it was when Kevin Stefanski first took over and what they had with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt from 2020 to 2022. The last 2 years have sucked. They've been ass. It's been a bummer to watch the Browns run for 3 yards and go down and do it over and over again. Get back to the DNA of this offense when this team was cruising. Get the ground game going. And Judkins and Sampson are going to be instrumental in getting back on track offensively by using the ground to feed the air. start the ground game, and let that open up things for you in the passing game. And I think Judkins and Sampson are going to complement one another very nicely. I know this sounds cliche, but there are a lot of similarities between just the playing style of Judkins and Sampson, right? Neither one's going to replace Nick Chubb, but I feel that Kevin Stefanski is going to love what he has at his fingertips between those two guys. If you are still watching by the end of this video right now, drop a CLE for me in the comment section. You know I love the end of the video crew, and we can pick a card to call it a video. Mr. Reed, which card do you want to go with? Two of diamonds for Mr. Reed Barkus. All right. I'm going to go. The clubs are hot. I'm going to say 8 of clubs. 4 hearts. 4 hearts. All right. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'll see everyone next time.